Hi everyone, welcome to week 4. A couple things before we get into a review of the content for this week. I just want to make you aware of, even though I did send out a note in that regard. So I put in a new folder, an exam folder. There are two items in that folder. The first one is the Pandora case. The second one is a Providence College presentation on internet radio. Both of those items will be essentially the content for the exam, and there'll be 4 questions that relate specifically to this information. So this is a Harvard Business School case that we'll be using for the exam. It's, how many pages? 21 pages, so it's a fair bit of content, and it talks about Pandora and what's going on, and this is from the perspective of looking at it back in 2009, so we're talking 3 years ago, which is a long time in the internet years, or internet time if you will, but it provides fundamentals on what's happening with Pandora. I don't know if any of you guys are Pandora users or not. I am. And in addition, there's also another presentation there, which is the Providence College presentation, and that one essentially is another sort of overview, actually a very good one, of what's happening in internet radio. We had a guest speaker at PC a couple years back, 2 years to be exact. Did a really good job talking about what was happening with internet radio, and as we wait for the presentation to load, it's a pretty big one actually. That content will be part in fair game. So what you can do is, between now and when the exam happens, you can spend as much time and effort as you want researching Pandora and internet radio, and the exam will be on those particular subjects or topics and related to the material that we've covered up into this particular week. So that'll be an overview of the concepts of consumer behavior and the initial concepts of marketing, and everything that we've covered up until now will be the topics or the types of questions we ask you based on this content. Okay? And actually it's pretty informative and interesting, and I think you'll learn something and definitely appreciate it and learn something in that particular area. So that's it on the exam folder. We've got the fora up, so the 4 discussion questions are there. Over the weekend, I'll make sure that I provide grading for all of the week. So grading will close on week 3 over the weekend. So if you have any other sort of closing comments that you want to put in there, you can certainly do that for the 4 questions, which are questions 9 through 10. And then I'll also grade week 2, which are questions 5 through 8. So those grades will go up as well, so you can see how you're doing on the discussion board. Those will be posted, and then we'll wait until about a week from now for week 5. And then really the focus of next week, if you check out the syllabus and take a look at it, is the exam. So really do your reading, any supplemental research that you see fit, and that will pay dividends obviously when you get the exam. So okay, where are we here? Right, so we do have some material, right, that's going to be there as well. So there will be, we'll post week 5 next week, earlier in the week, and you'll have about a week to do that, and then we'll actually give you the exam questions. There will be 4, and then I'll also put up a quick video that talks about what the structure for the exam is and how it works, so that you're familiar with it. I'll do that midweek sometime before we deliver it. Okay, so this week we're talking about consumer behavior, and specifically the process by how not only people make decisions to buy things, but also use and then dispose of products. So consumer behavior is made up by both those 2 elements. And every decision-making process has 5 steps, every single one. You got to recognize you have a need. I'm thirsty. How do I get a drink? You do an information search. It may be as simple as what's on the shelf. Maybe you're trying to drink healthier, so you're not thinking about sodas, and you're thinking about non-carbonated drinks, and you may be thinking about, okay, what kind of energy drink if you're interested, or maybe not. You look at the alternatives, you see what's available, you buy something, and then there's always the post-purchase behavior. Did I like it? Did it work out for me? Did I feel like I got my money's worth? And then all of those 5 things are influenced by cultural, social, individual, and psychological factors that affect all those steps. Okay, so the first one is obviously an imbalance between what you want to be. I'm thirsty. I want to get my thirst quenched. Right? I'm hungry. I need to eat. My car just broke down. I need a car. Right? There's an imbalance between where you are and what your desired state is. So that obviously helps consumers get from one to the other, and there's all kinds of things that influence that once you determine that you have a need. Things like sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing can have a big effect on or stimulus that can have a big effect on how you buy, especially in the retail sector. If you think about going into an Abercrombie and Fitch, that's a barrage on the senses, right? They have their own aroma that's out there. They certainly have a certain kind of lighting in a store. They have a certain kind of music that's played, an organization to the store. All of that has an influence on people buying. In my case, it would be a negative one. But with the target audience that they're looking at, which is prepubescent and teenagers, it's perfect for them. It's what they're looking for. It's kind of the club scene, and obviously if you buy clothes there, it helps sort of align yourself with being aspirational for that. The information search, everyone has to sort of do that. If you're buying something complicated, it might be extensive. If it's something simple, it may not be. So there are elements that are both non-marketing controlled and marketing controlled. The non-marketing ones are things that people talk about, right? Which is why Facebook and social media is seen as an interesting, compelling alternative, right? For sort of non-controlled discussion and inference and recommendations. And then you have marketing control stuff, which is your advertising, your public relations, things that you do proactively as a company to get information out there. So usually, if you have something that is a less risky decision, it's more of a product experience, and you have confidence in making a decision, you don't need as much information. If it's a new area, something that your first car, your first house, your first education, all these kinds of things have an influence on what's going on and what your need for information is to make a good informed decision. Your evoked set is what you get after you've done your need recognition and your information search, and it's the set of decisions or alternatives that you're looking at in order to be able to pick one from. So you've already done the due diligence, if you will. And from that, right, you look at what are the product attributes. Is it too expensive? Is it too small? Is it the wrong color? Is it missing this feature? And then you rank what those things are. And then at the end of that, after you go through that filtering process, right, shown by the funnel here, you purchase something. So marketing, or good marketing, helps determine which attributes are the most influential to a consumer's choice. And it helps influence whether you buy something or not. And good marketers know what their target market is looking for, what they're interested in, and what's most important to them. And you should focus on those things. If you have a product that's got some strengths here and some weaknesses as well, you don't focus on the weaknesses. Clearly, you focus on the strengths. So this is just a visualization, right, of the other slide, and it shows that you have that process that everybody goes through. The only one that's missing here is the post purchase behavior. All of them are influenced by social, psychological, individual, and cultural issues. Routine response, bottle of water, whatever your favorite drink is, what you have for lunch, is typically routine response. Picking a school to go to, right, to get an advanced degree, picking a spouse or significant other, picking a phone sometimes, that's more of a limited decision making. Sometimes people make it extensive, but it's usually cost and complexity that typically involves more consumer involvement, if you will. 5 factors that influence decisions, right? How involved are you? How long does it take to make a decision? How expensive something is? What is the information search? And then, sometimes you've got, 100 different choices. Sometimes you only have 2 or 3. All of those elements influence decisions. And this is just another sort of chart that kind of takes a lot of those previous slides and integrates them into one. It's a nice kind of overview of what happens with consumer buying decisions and the variations in them. So we talked about what's routine, what's limited, what's extensive, and there's also other factors, right? If you've bought something before and you bought 20 of them and you're used to it, you're not going to be as engaged. How interested are you? Is it something that you really are into, right? And are really excited about, if you will. It could be that if you get something and you get the wrong thing, there could be some negative consequences, also known as buyer's remorse. You buy something and the second you buy, you go, wow, why did I do that? It could also be the situation if you're under time pressure for whatever reason, your car blew up and you've got to get to work and you've got to get a car and you can't rent it for that long because it's expensive and there's a lot, so that might make a quick decision for you, where if you've got a car that you know is going and you start looking for that next car, it gives you more time, you're going to look at things very differently. And then a lot of elements are social visibility, right? Keeping up with the Joneses. Well, they've got their new BMW, I've got to get mine too, or else I'm not, making the grade, so to speak. Or, I'm sending my child to a private school. Why aren't you? Does that mean you don't love your kids as much as I do? That sort of thing. So social visibility has a function on consumer involvement as well. And actually, when you market high involvement purchase, typically with extensive and informative promotion, it's very different. If it's low involvement, you just want to get people's attention, right? Coupons, 2-for-1, store promotional, end cap displays, those things that you just want to get and stop people for a second to think about it. Typically, high involvement involves much more significant, higher end, printed pieces, more one-on-one, very, very different in terms of how you market. We talked about the factors that influence it, right? The four: cultural, social, individual, and psychological. And culture is something that we all grow up with. I am a son of immigrant parents, and their culture, right, and they were from Portugal, is very significant and built in still to how we do things and how we buy things and what's of interest to us. And so sometimes language, right, if you look at the Hispanic population, it's very significant. That's an element of culture which has to do with language and values, and there are myths and customs there and rituals as well. So all these things have an influence on markets and what people buy and don't buy. It tends to be pervasive. It's everywhere. It's very functional. It's something you learn from your family. I learned it from my parents, and my kids have gotten a subset of that and a different filter because we're one generation removed, and it's changing all the time as well. So values, these tend to be core American values, right? We tend to be focused on our kids. It's a capitalistic society, right or wrong. It's about freedom, and there is materialism. We have the largest consumers of stuff in the world, which is can be good and can also be detrimental as well. And so these things tend to drive how people market and get marketed to. There are also subcultures, which are groups within groups that have their own unique traits, and there's different characterizations for that. Your social class has a lot to do with who you hang out with, and typically these are 5 common measurements, or 4 and then the others. So occupation, income, education, wealth. If you have this information on a consumer, you can tell a lot about them for sure. Okay, if you're a cardiovascular surgeon, you're going to buy certain things. If you're a shipping clerk, you're going to buy different stuff. You all need food, clothes, drink, things to entertain you, but the level at which a shipping clerk would buy versus a cardiovascular surgeon, by definition, is very different. Education is the largest determinant of your ability to earn a living. So if you've got a master's or a PhD degree, you're just by looking at this somewhat dated information, you're absolutely positively going to be able to earn more money and spend more money as a result, by comparison somebody that doesn't even have a high school education. So all these things have an influence on how you're marketed to. and it has definitely an impact on social class. So the people you hang out with, opinion leaders, reference groups, all these things have an influence for sure. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, I think. Or is it the other way around? But, your gender has a lot to do with what products get marketed to you. Your age and where you are in your age life cycle is significant. If you're just graduated from school and pretty much taking care of yourself, if you're in your 50s and you follow a traditional path, you may be married with 2 or 3 kids, and your needs and wants are significantly different. And then you have your own personality, your self-concept, and lifestyle, and what's important to you and what isn't. But at the end of the day, your psychological emphasis, there's an expression that says perception is reality. What you and how you see the world has a big influence in how you buy and then how you seek products from companies that provide them to you. And that affects what motivates you, how you learn, your beliefs and attitudes. All those things are filters that will change how you consume an ad or a pitch from a company. And it's really how you interpret things. So I may look at this slide and say, okay, it's that color behind the word perception is green. But some people, if they think it's red and they say it's red and they believe it, doesn't matter what my view and everyone else's is that says it's green. You're not seeing it. If they think it's red, that's fine. So that's kind of a radical way to sort of look at perception. But the point is that people can look at the same thing and think very different things about it. There was a psychologist named Maslow, and he came up with something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs when he classified needs and motivations into 5 categories. And this pyramid, basically, and this concept is pretty logical. What it says is that you can't reach higher levels up the pyramid until you build and satisfy the ones underneath. So the base of the pyramid is physiological needs, and clearly, right? If you're hungry or thirsty or need to go to the bathroom, and that's going to take precedence, and you're going to be focusing a lot more on that than on, should I get pink or get a blue one, right? Your ability to sort of think complexly and cogently about things and how you buy them and what you need and don't need is affected by those lower parts of the pyramid. Let's say you're walking along, it's late at night, you're coming back from a great night out with friends, all of a sudden there's a dark figure behind you and you're all by yourself. Immediately, you really can't think about anything else about, how do I get out of this situation without getting hurt, right? So things like physiological safety needs and then social needs, right? If you've got everything going on, but people don't like you or don't hang out with you and you don't have a good set of friends, that's going to affect your other things that you do in life, right? Your work, your quality of how you do other things. So Maslow does a really good job of kind of pointing that out, and it kind of does a nice job of looking at sort of what motivates people. And you can certainly market to people based on fear. You can market to people based on physiological needs and other things, right? Depending on what's going on. So it's a really nice way to sort of look at human motivation. 2 types of learning. Experiential is where you basically do. Conceptual is you learn through watching or hearing or doing or seeing and analyzing other things. Some people learn better one way versus the other. Both of them are important elements, and you can market to people based on whether they do experiential or conceptual learning. Beliefs and attitudes, and this actual chart here kind of summarizes all the other ones and looks at all the psychological factors that influence people and motivate them, and are a basis for knowing where people are on this sort of chart, if you will, is kind of important when you go to market. So that's a wrap for this week. Feel free to reach out with any questions. It's fine to post questions. It's also okay to call and talk. And I'm actually thinking about seeing if we can have a group conference call via Skype. So I'd like to know, and I'll send out an email in this regard, if anyone doesn't have Skype, it's an easy thing to put on your computer. I'd like to be able to do that to see if we can actually talk to each other over the internet within the next week or two. Probably a nice time to do it would be a post-exam review, and it's kind of in the middle of the course. It'll be a good way to see where we're at, and it's always nice to associate a voice with someone in class. So that's the wrap for this week, and we'll talk to you soon.